I'm William Nick One Green, and I'm from the Bronx.
My name is Colin Turner. I write Cool Spin. I'm a Cancer. And yeah, I was one of the original producers of Videograf.
My name is Sacha Jenkins, and I used to write a little graffiti, but I was kind of like, little neighborhood, writer, hit some double R's. People know me from my hood. But at a young age, I had an interest in graffiti and publishing my own magazine.
My name is Weston, and my graffiti alias is Sand2.
My role in Videograf was I was sort of like the court jester. At the end of each Videograf, there was like a message from the producers, and it was really embarrassing footage of me like drinking 40s. You know what I mean? I'm like mad young. I'm discovering alcohol, and like drinking a 40 was like a big deal, and so I'm a little tipsy from a 40. But that also morphed into doing these things, these spots called the poetry moment.
Yo, I hit your mother with a power pellet.
Alright, man.
Oh, you want to do mother jokes too?
Yeah.
You rolling?
Yeah.
Yo, man. What up? My name is Sacha. Yo, I hit your mother with a power pellet like Pac-Man. She said waka waka. You know what I'm saying? Waka waka. Big black Mac with no seeds on my bun. Chucking spears to stun. Run, Frosty, run to your unique cave, shelter from the sun. Want to step to me? That can be fun. Be alone, Yoko, or I'll be out like the flying nun. Getting mad acoustic like my man Don Ho. The bigger you are, the easier it is for you to fall like a domino. You got the wrong show. Ain't no gongs here, dear. And fear is your freedom. This is Videograf money. Stage lights always beaming and gleaming. Down to scare the demon.
Sadly or ironically, I always had an interest in writing, and my magazine was a platform for my writing, but I also had an interest in poetry for whatever reason. And so we did this thing called the poetry moment, where I would do these poems, but they were like kind of freestyle, and they were a combination mother jokes and just real silly stuff. And I think Carl ultimately threw it in there as a goof, kind of to clown me and exploit my ass for big dollars and get rich off of my talent. And you owe me, motherfucker. It went from being kind of a goof to like a spoof, to like people recognizing me in the street, like reciting these like real stupid things that I just did as a joke, and Carl threw in there to clown me.
So you were Videograf's first rock star?
Nah, I was Videograf's black court jester. That's who I was. Videograf was just such a media created by graffiti writers for graffiti writers, documenting a culture that essentially is criminal, is revolutionary. And at the time, I guess you can say Hustler or Larry Flint or people who were in the porn industry, there was a time when that was like radical and revolutionary, but there wasn't a video by car thieves for car thieves about stealing cars, and Videograf was this thing where it was like by writers, even though you guys weren't necessarily still writing, but guys from the culture documenting the culture for people within the culture. It wasn't for everybody, and that's what was great about writing. It's like you wrote not to please everyone, you wrote to speak to a very specific community of people, and that's what Videograf did in a very authentic way. So much so that, guys like Carl and Nick, as producers, they get arrested, they get their homes raided, they get their lives turned around, and turned upside down, and Carl, being the nut job that he is, his passion and his understanding of what is right and what is just within the world of media, and his rights as an American, as fundamental as that might sound, was the impetus for a lot of where he was coming from, because he did have a right. When he's going to the Vandal Squad's office and he's finding cops that are harassing people or who have harassed him, and he's got the camera on them, I mean, come on, like, who does that?
Did I give you permission? Put me on any of your videotapes. I'm doing an investigation. I'm an undercover officer. I understand that. You put my life at jeopardy. I want you to understand that I'm investigating your criminal activities right now. I'm investigating your criminal activities right now. I'm getting reports that you are involved in criminal activity. I have a legal right. I have a legal right to use this footage. I have a legal right. I have a legal right. I have a legal right. Why don't you come and try to do another search warrant? Do you just to cover up your criminal activities? Your criminal activities. You have no comment, I guess. No comment? None? Okay.
You know what I mean? Either you're a journalist or you're crazy. And sometimes to be a journalist, you have to be crazy, right? But what happens when Carl goes to the Vandal Squad headquarters in the Bronx and videotapes a guy, even though it winds up in the video and the face is obscured and the cop is saying, don't show my face, you're jeopardizing my life or whatever. Next day, I believe, his place gets raided. What are some moments in Videograf history that stick out in your mind?
Many moments stick out in my brain. The LA trip.
What year was that?
That was in 1990.
And what was special about that trip?
What was special was we were young, we were gung-ho, we were very, very, hey, what's going on? What it is out here? We want to get it. And we were just, it was fun. It was fun, but it was also, we also had the smarts to know that what we're doing, there's a purpose. There is. I'm sorry. He's making me nervous. He's making me nervous.
I don't give a fuck. We got our shit took. I can't believe you're gonna say we were smart.
Was that 90? Was that 90 or 93?
That was 90, man. We went back and shit was successful.
We went back, shit was different, but
Yeah. I like the fact that what I'm trying to get at is I like the fact that we all were together. We all were having a good time.
When did you realize that you wanted to start documenting? I mean, it seems like you've always had interest in film in general.
Yeah.
Before graffiti.
Definitely.
So talk about your interest in film and how you married the two.
I mean, when I was a kid, I got access to my mother's Brownie regular 8 camera. So the fantasy started around probably 75, 76. I actually didn't buy my first film camera until 1985. So I was 18 years old. That's when I got into Super 8 filmmaking. And 2 years later, Colin had bought a really high-end Sony regular 8mm camera. And like as he said in the interview, that every time we would try to think of a project, we would go 9 when we thought of graffiti. But I was in the Soho Zat one day looking at International Graffiti Times, and I thought, and no one had done this before, a reoccurring street video about graffiti. And I just thought, this is a great idea. And that was like 88. That was sometime in the middle of 88.
one of the big mistakes, and Carl just reminded me of this, is that we missed like the tail end of graffiti on the trains, because there was still graffiti on the trains when we started filming, and we just let it go. But we got a lot of street footage, and we started hooking up with writers, and through Nick and making the connections like that, and Henry, we started interviewing different graffiti writers. We interviewed Phase 2 and a lot of writers who were current at the time. And
the idea starts in summer of '88, and we execute February of '89, and the video comes out December of '89.
Carl had his vision on what what Videograf was going to be like. So the thing I remember about it was that, for Videograf 1, neither of us really knew what we were doing. I mean, I had a little bit of experience editing, and but not a whole lot. And Carl had a vision, but he didn't know how to actually do it at the time.
How Videograf evolved over time in terms of your own technical abilities, evolving technology, footage you were getting.
The main thing that happened was I was unhappy. I was very unhappy with the first Videograf. Because I knew that it could have been better. I mean, when we left the edit room, we were happy we was done, but I was under no impression that was what we wanted. Now, a lot of it we just didn't have the footage that I wanted. But so the first Videograf came out, and everyone was pretty happy. People was patting me on. People who would later become jealous of the success of Videograf at that time was patting me on the back and congratulating us for doing it and all that stuff. And when I went into production in Videograf 2. First let me back up and say that the original concept for Videograf was that it was going to be the graffiti street video magazine that was going to cover all aspects, dancing, graffiti, emceeing, and stuff like that. And we were going to cover old school graffiti writers. Well, we immediately figured out we weren't going to do the hip hop stuff. we're just going to focus on graffiti.
Why?
Just logistically, it was just going to be a nightmare. We were nobodies, really didn't have a real way to approach artists, because, you know, people weren't going to want, who are you? They had MTV at the time. You know what I'm saying? It's probably a mistake, but, you know, we stuck with graffiti. And what happened was I realized that old school graffiti writers were a pain in the ass. They're simply difficult to deal with.
How did you realize that?
Trying to schedule them to actually show up for interviews, and, you know, some of them would talk about money involvement. And I quickly realized that young, hungry, eager writers were much easier to deal with than anyone that had any kind of reputation. Talented unknowns as far as painters is because they were the easiest people to deal with. And I stick to that philosophy today. I rarely deal with so-called living legends just because they're a pain in the ass. And we made a very early decision to go after the younger writers who were actually talented but weren't known, because they were lining up to get into Videograf.
What do you remember about the first Videograf coming out, how you felt, the reaction to it?
The first Videograf coming out, I mean, I was just glad that we finally got the project done. That's the way I felt about it.
My initial reaction when Videograf 1 came out was that I was just overwhelmed, and I was excited about the fact that we have a video that's for us. It's of our time. Star Wars was something that represented, as we all know, 82 and a certain era, but the end of the 80s, you know, and the writers of the time, what was for us. And so the excitement of seeing, you know, my contemporaries of that time, you know, that was broad for me. That was it was just so exciting. I remember watching Videograf like 10 times. What up, everybody? Yo, I'm Nick One. You know what, I'm down with VGP. We had the freight yards here in LA. And yo, we with some writers. And yo, I think you're gonna like this segment because yo, shit is wicked. Things are massive. Peace.
There's a challenge, man, going out right now, and anyone on the 12 line, I'm racing for it right now, okay? I'm racing for 12 line.
I started understanding what I was going to enjoy about Videograf after I videotaped J.A. J.A. was the beginning of what would become Videograf's signature. And I went out filming with J.A. 2 nights in a row, filming him bombing. And when I got the footage back in Henry's studio, you know, he didn't have his editing equipment at the time, but I had 2 cameras. And I took Welcome to the Terror Dome, and I did a real rough edit of the J.A. footage. And I knew that bombing footage was the future.
Excuse me, what do you think about this particular art form?
Don't care too much for it.
Okay, that's good.
I would have my permission walls, or even illegal painters doing murals, but I would make sure in between each segment there would be bombing, because that was the excitement. And that really, the JA segment showed me that I needed to have more bombing footage, that was going to be it. And when Videograf 2 came out, oh man, it was on for real, because that was the beginning of like, that, you know, I was willing to take risks.
Is anybody in there?
Well, tell them what your slogan was.
Oh, niggas taking chances. Niggas taking chances for sure.
So talk about the chances you took.
Oh, you know, we took a few chances, man. It was definitely, I was in the field. I was out in the field, man. You know what I'm saying? this is one of those kind of things also that it was a lot of spur of the moment stuff. And I'll be honest with you, I never asked Colin to come on any of the really crazy illegal shit. I think Colin went on one of the early bombing missions with Cope. That was the one that he was there for. Nick didn't get involved with this stuff, this bombing stuff, until later on down the line and stuff, you know what I'm saying? But I was out in the field a lot, and it's amazing because it's like a lot of shit that I did then, obviously I wouldn't do today, but yeah, I mean, you know, it's just being in the train yards. You know, the night in July 4th, I believe it was 91, with Ket, Ghost, Bruise, Zeno.
Yo, Ket, man, we meet again, man.
What up? I'm in the ghost yard, you know what I'm saying? Fuck them ass niggas aren't gonna see my face anyway. I fuck niggas up with the quickness.
I love graffiti. It's a beautiful day in a nice train yard.
Yo, what you write, man?
Bruise 1. RIS crew.
Oh, wait, what yard we in right now, man?
We're in the ghost yard.
That was a really crazy night for me because I hadn't been in the ghost yard at that point in, like, you know, probably, it was definitely 6 years since the last time I had been in the ghost yard. And, you know, a train ended up pulling in on us.
You guys are fucking casual, man.
That was my last shot.
So what happened when the train pulled in?
We all ran out. I mean, we all just bounced. I mean, we stayed too long. I mean, there's a famous, not in the original Videograf, but when I released the bonus footage, I walk up to Ghost and I say, how long are we going to be here for? And he says, until we're finished. And I said, oh, man.
So how long we going to be here for?
Huh?
How long we going to be here for?
How long am I gonna be here?
How long are we going to be in here for?
Oh,
man.
So what do you think Videograf's legacy is?
Videograf's legacy is definitely starting, I personally believe starting the whole street video genre, but specifically starting the graffiti video genre. We definitely started it. There is no debating that. There is some people who need to be reminded of it, but there's definitely no debating that we started that, and we had a definitely nice run